Alright, let's talk about one of the most divisive and deeply personal topics in the United States: gun laws. It's a subject that ignites passionate debate everywhere you turn, but it's often filled with emotion and misinformation. So, what are the actual facts? How do we separate legal reality from political rhetoric? Today, we're cutting through the confusion to look at what the law really says about owning, buying, and carrying firearms in America. The entire legal framework begins with the Second Amendment. A well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms, shall not be infringed. For centuries, the debate was whether this protected a militia's right or an individual's right. That changed in 2008 with District of Columbia versus Heller. The Supreme Court affirmed an individual's right to own a gun for self-defense at home. 2 years later, McDonald versus Chicago applied that right to the states. These cases are the modern foundation of gun rights. But the Heller decision also said this right is not unlimited. The federal government sets a legal floor with laws like the Gun Control Act of 1968, which defines who is prohibited from owning a gun. But states are free to build on that floor, creating a dizzying patchwork of regulations. What's legal in a permissive state like Texas with few restrictions is often highly illegal in a restrictive state like California or New York. Crossing a state line can turn a law-abiding gun owner into a felon. To buy a gun from a licensed dealer, you must pass a background check through the FBI's NICS system. This check looks for felony convictions, domestic violence misdemeanors, and other disqualifiers. But here's a major point of contention. Federal law doesn't require checks for private sales between individuals. This is the gun show loophole, though it applies to any private sale. Critics say this allows prohibited people to get guns, so about 20 states have closed this gap by requiring universal background checks for all sales. Now, what about the guns themselves? It's crucial to know the difference between automatic and semi-automatic. Fully automatic machine guns are heavily restricted and have been since the 1930s. Semi-automatic firearms, which fire one bullet per trigger pull, are common. The controversy is around assault weapons, a political term for semi-automatic rifles with certain cosmetic features. A federal ban on them expired in 2004, but several states have their own bans, along with restrictions on high-capacity magazines. A newer battleground is ghost guns, unserialized, self-made firearms that are difficult to trace. The right to bear arms in public is another legal maze. Over 25 states now have constitutional carry, meaning no permit is needed to carry a handgun. Other states are shall issue, where authorities must provide a permit if you meet the criteria. The most restrictive states were may issue, where officials had discretion to deny permits. But the 2022 Supreme Court case, New York versus Bruin, struck down that subjective standard, making it much harder for states to deny permits to qualified applicants and reshaping public carry laws nationwide. And if you use a gun for self-defense, the traditional duty to retreat doctrine says you must try to escape danger before using deadly force. But over half the states have stand your ground laws. These remove the duty to retreat from any place you're legally allowed to be. Supporters say they empower citizens, while critics argue they can escalate violence and shield people from prosecution. A debate famously highlighted by the Trayvon Martin case. Now, here's the reality check. The US is an absolute outlier, with more guns than any other country, by a lot. With an estimated 120 guns for every 100 people, there are more guns than people here. That means gun laws aren't just about rules, they're about culture, history, and identity. For many Americans, guns represent protection, freedom, and tradition. But there's also a big debate about safety. The US also has a much higher rate of gun violence than other developed nations. Some people say stricter laws, like those in Australia or the UK, would save lives by reducing access to firearms. Others argue that more restrictions wouldn't stop determined criminals, and would only punish law-abiding citizens who rely on guns for self-defense. The data is complicated, and both sides have statistics to support their case, making it a debate with no easy answer. So, what does all this mean for you? It means that U.S. gun law is a shifting mosaic of federal rules, Supreme Court rulings, and state laws that can change overnight. If you're thinking about owning a gun, or just want to understand the debate, you've got to check your state's specific rules. There's no one-size-fits-all answer in America. The conversation is always changing, and so are the laws. That's the big picture. It's complicated, controversial, and always evolving. To dig deeper, check your state's official government website or talk to a qualified legal expert for advice tailored to your situation. In a debate this important, being informed is essential. Stay informed and stay safe.